pictures at the time, Eric Plaskow, Arthur Krim, Mike Medavoy, Bill Bernstein. I think they saw what a hard worker I was.
Never has a movie changed the impending narrative, established a benchmark, and stamped its feet at the box office as an underdog. Nevertheless, the movie The Silence of the Lambs made history in an unusual style. Its impact blew across diverse film industries and, without any exaggeration, remained a trailblazer for movies seeking direction. The scenes in the film never did justice to all that there was. Put on your seatbelt and let's go on a smooth ride as we uncover what The Silence of the Lambs cast reveals that most fans never figured out. Sean Connery almost got cast for the role of Lecter. Just as every movie has specific casts who get cast in a role, Sean Connery was almost the man who clinched the title of Lecter. Even though he failed, many believed he would have done better if he had played the character Lecter. Jonathan Demme, the exceptional director who gave the movie an amazing masterpiece, was the one who shared this information in one of his interviews. He had wanted Anthony Hopkins for the role of Hannibal the Cannibal, Lecter from the get-go, but later made a statement that revealed his ordeal. "I was trying to be diligent and get a more commercial actor for the part because Tony didn't have the box office allure that he later gained, so I went to Sean Connery, who found the piece revolting." No one knows why he chose such a demeanor, but he was possibly offended because he was expecting something better. Nevertheless, his refusal gave room for other options. Kudos to the producers who pulled all strings to make it happen. Fava beans and a nice Chianti.
A census taker once tried to test me.
Every contribution of the cast in The Silence of the Lambs played a significant role in the movie's overall success. From the major to the minor casts, none performed below the expectations of the directors and producers. However, a few scenes in the movie stood out, including Anthony Hopkins's. Do you remember his iconic lip roll sound after his viral fava bean speech? It truly was the core of the moment. But have you sat down to think about how that speech came into play and turned everything for the good of the movie? No one knew how he came up with the speech until he gave a clue that dumbfounded many. Bela Lugosi's iconic title performance inspired the speech in Dracula, 1931. He got stuck in the movie to the point that even after many years, he was inseparable from some of the scenes, and when he got the opportunity to get the gears rolling, he incorporated it into the movie, and the rest is history. When I was a kid, I'd tell the girls around the street the story about Dracula, and I'd go the "tha," and as a result, they'd run away screaming. Hopkins today is known as a master of improvisation. Nevertheless, his adventures can be traced back many years. The Buffalo Bill character was Ted's idea.
They got cut off because they were showing me shit they shouldn't show me. I saw some shit.
Did you know that developing moves for the Buffalo Bill character took months of undivided attention? For a while, producers, directors, and even choreographers were brought to their knees to figure out the best steps that would suffice. After going back and forth with several steps that never matched their intentions, they stepped back to figure out what to do next. And just when they were about to incorporate something else into the movie scenes, came the golden idea that changed the whole course of the movie. On one occasion, when they were stuck thinking of what to do, Ted Levine devised an infamous improvised step on the spot. At first, it didn't make sense, but when the choreographers added a little spice, it became one of the most loved moves in the movie. However, Ted didn't develop these moves until he had a few shots of tequila for Dutch courage beforehand. Levine later revealed in an interview that the song "Goodbye," which he dances to, was not the original song. The initial choice was "Her Strut" by Bob Seger, and he did that because he felt it was better. "Goodbye Horses" was a little gentler and stranger, and a little bit more feminine. It must have been tedious for the whole crew. Nevertheless, Levine came through with his not-so-popular moves and gave them hope thereafter. Levine should be given his flowers, don't you think so? The actress who played the role of Catherine went through a lot.
Perfect segue. I don't know if people know that Jonathan Demme used to be a publicist.
Every role in a typical movie comes with minimal stress. But in the case of the actress who played the role of Catherine, the reverse was the case. It was truly a tug of war for her. Nevertheless, she did her best to make it happen. Brooke Smith got the gig as Catherine Martin, but not without a condition of gaining 25 pounds. Speaking to Vulture on how she eventually got the role, she had this to say: "He met with me, talked with me, told me what it would be. I remember him asking me, 'Why do you want to do this?' Which is an excellent question. I remember it was because I thought I couldn't. I thought, I don't think I can do this, so he gave me the part. I had to gain 25 pounds. In the film, Buffalo Bill's victims are often overweight so that he can starve them and use their extra skin to make a skin suit for himself, which was really fun. I was also just coming out of my life in punk rock and entering my life as an actress. And this came after she had a one-on-one chat with Vincent D'Onofrio, who had put on 75 pounds for the part of Private Pyle in Full Metal Jacket 1987. And he said to her, 'You gotta ask the producers to give you a credit card, they gotta pay for your food.' Martin did that and later joked, 'That's why they went over budget, because of my food.' Hannibal's screenplay was undeniably a copy-paste job.
I would be really happy to see Dustin Hoffman sticking out on the big screen. He doesn't do much anymore. Well, he had that HBO show. Yeah.
Every writer wants their job to be made easy, and they leverage it without delay when they find an opportunity like that. This isn't about lack of creativity or anything related to it, but some smart moves empower one financially and diligently. Before Ted Talley was allowed to ink The Silence of the Lambs, someone else was already on it. He initially contacted Orion president Mike Medavoy, who gave him feedback no one had heard about until the president revealed it himself. In an interview with one of the finest presenters, he revealed what he had told Ted Talley. "Gene thinks he's going to write this, but don't worry, he'll find out how hard that is, and we'll get back to you." Fortunately, things worked in his favor and the switch was made almost immediately. After he had a brief meeting with Gene, who was initially slated to handle the script, he called Talley later and gave him an option he couldn't refuse. Gene's written 50 pages of the script and he's only 50 pages into the book, so if you can meet him and convince him that you're the right guy for it, you'll have the job. Ted was smart enough to play his card well. That was how a phenomenal script that stood as a platform for a fantastic piece came through. Mistaken for a children's story.
Well, movies, they say, do go. Oh, it's a terrible thing to say, but people do like entertainment, don't they? They like getting away, and they...
Yeah.
Oftentimes, good deals come in disguise, and one of the cast almost turned down a role because of what he felt at the time. It was just one of those days when actors have misplaced priorities, but thanks to his intuition, he realized his mistake before it got too late. When Hopkins first received the screenplay for The Silence of the Lambs, he initially thought it was for kids. Speaking with People, the renowned actor made a shocking revelation that many fans are oblivious to. He recalled receiving the script from his agent while playing Butterfly in London. He said, "I want you to read this." I said, "Is it an offer?" He said, "It's a film with Jodie Foster called The Silence of the Lambs." Because of the title, I thought it was a children's story, says Hopkins, now playing Sigmund Freud in the film Freud's Last Session. So I opened it. I sat in the dressing room in the theater and read through Lecter's first scene, and I said, "Is this an offer?" He said, "I'm not sure." I said, "I'm not going to read anymore because this is one of the best parts I've ever read." He eventually got the gears rolling, and what would have been a misplaced priority turned out to be one of the best movies in Hollywood's history. Hopkins was on a different level, and honestly, he gave his all to making The Silence of the Lambs what many know it to be today. Foster found her way to Clarice through her diction.
Oh, I bet a lot. How many people saw it in an actual movie theater when it came out? Oh, that's quite a few. I'm surprised. That's great. Wow.
Playing a character different from your authentic self can often be tedious and complex, and for Jodie Foster, it took a while before she could adjust. After a series of trials to attain perfection, she couldn't just hit the nail on the head until she figured out a way to make it easier. In Foster's interpretation of Clarice, she spoke slowly and with trepidation. For instance, she didn't use contractions in her syntax because Clarice tried to put up a facade that presented her as better educated than she was. This was not as easy as it sounds, as she would later reveal in an interview. For me, with Clarice, it was also about her voice, mostly because she was somebody who had been scarred by the bleating of the lambs, the sound, and how there was nothing she could do to help them, Foster says. "My mom said to me, 'Why do you want to play this character who's kind of quiet and mousy?' It was something she was pretty different from. Nevertheless, she provided history with something that will never be erased from the memories of movie lovers. The scene that helped place Clarice as a character happened early in the movie. It was when she entered an elevator surrounded by other male FBI agents who towered over her. Here she realized she had to give it her all, even if it meant doing something unusual. And today all we see is the glamour of her courage. There was almost a shame that she wasn't bigger, that she wasn't stronger, this person trying to overcome the failure of the body they were born in. I understood that was her strength. In some ways, she was just like the victims, another girl in another town. The fact that she could relate to those victims made her the hero. A shot that sponsored a kind of intimacy.
I put out a chair for you.
Oh, yes, that's very good, thank you.
I'll be watching. You'll do fine.
Every scene has its kind of performance, and the actors usually have no choice but to follow the director's instincts. Did you know that while The Silence of the Lambs was in the filming stage, there was a scene that inspired an intimate reaction? This would have been difficult to know, as no one except the two actors involved had any idea. Foster revealed to Vanity Fair that the conversations between Starling and Lecter were shot over 2 days, one from her perspective and the other from his. It was meant to be the most harmless scene ever, but contrary to what they thought, it aroused special feelings between them. Even though they were looking into the camera the whole time, the spark was so intimate that it felt like they were already into each other. "Those scenes feel so intimate, yet we couldn't see each other," she said. At one point, she confessed that even the producers thought something would pull them together after the movie, but it never happened. They learned how to keep it on a professional level, and honestly, they did. A new kind of sell away from the popular.
Or did Jack Crawford send you for one last wheedle before you're both booted off the case?
No, I came because I wanted to.
One thing producers have in the grip of their palms is how to put their creativity to work without breaking the bank. And in The Silence of the Lambs, the producers got this perfectly. When the cell scene was to be shot, producer Dan thought of something pretty different from what was known, yet classy. So he came up with a cell that appeared to be in a dank, dim basement, rather than the concrete and steel sort of prison or fluorescent-lit, white-walled psychiatric facility that was rampant at the time. The facade of the building itself, the fictitious Baltimore State Forensic Hospital, actually the Western Center in Canonsburg, Piedmont, is more Shutter Island Gothic than a sterile state hospital. And that was on purpose, of course. It revealed deeply the innovations that were locked up in his heart, and he had this to say. An idea that appealed to all of us was the idea of the stone, clinical, kind of lifeless reality of Quantico, Demme said. The FBI situations contrasted with the rest of the film, especially Lecter's. With him, we could have gone for a more modern, clinical, mental institution and penitentiary kind of feel, but we wanted to push the emotional potential of the more gothic look. Dan was always thinking outside the box, and every time he did, it came out beautifully. A breakthrough she had expected all her life.
So some very interesting people and some real American heroes, if I may say that.
Sure.
Specific roles dominate the history of these actors' careers, showcasing what an actor is made of. Sometimes it gets frustrating when they intend to play a different character, but all they get is what they are known for. While filming The Silence of the Lambs, Foster had a desire locked in her heart that no one knew about, and all she was looking for was an opportunity to let it out. After playing many characters preyed upon by men, Foster wanted to do the hunting and rescuing as a change. And guess what? Her long-held desires came to pass. Having played a lot of victims in my life and wondering why that pattern had happened in my career, I sat back and looked at this piece and felt like it was a departure for me. She explained in the documentary Jonathan Demme and Jodie Foster. Instead of being the one who was trapped in the pit, I was the character who was compelled by her destiny in some ways. She knew somewhere in her heart that she had to save women, so it was a departure regarding my work and some psychological completion. Jonathan Demme didn't think he was the right choice.
Is that who I think it is? And I tracked Justin down. I was working on a script that unfortunately didn't get made.
Sometimes even the best directors are caught up in doubt about whether they can handle a project critically. And honestly speaking, they usually need people to reassure them that they are the best for a project. Did you know that Jonathan Demme had mixed thoughts about this before the movie The Silence of the Lambs was shot? In one of his interviews with Empire, he revealed what happened behind the scenes that no one knew about. "I wouldn't have offered it to me," he chuckled to Empire, but he was all in, and Demme said, "I love the idea of a female protagonist. It's more interesting with a woman because that's a point against her from the start." He also would have been happy to direct Pfeiffer, who starred in Married to the Mob. Still, once he met Foster, who had zero reservations about taking the part and never shied away in her films from confronting what lurks in the darker recesses of humanity, he knew she was perfect for the part of the tough and determined Clarice, whose vulnerability brims just below the surface. It wasn't an easy adventure, but he could pull through most unexpectedly. In fact, Jodie gave her own side of the story when she told Total Film in 2005 how she got involved in the whole process and meeting Demme afterward. She said, "I found out that Jodie had read the book earlier and had expressed interest," Demme told Empire. "When I met Jodie, whom I had never met before and who I had seen only in films, what really excited me most was the fact that I think this is the first part Jodie's ever played in which she hasn't had to mask her intelligence, where she's been allowed to just be every bit as smart as the exceptionally bright person she actually is." Hopkins was already 3 when he took up the script that changed his life forever.
Okay.
I am.
You are dangerously insane. Look at that. Yeah, man, those are some peepers you have there.
Breakthroughs in movies often come when actors least expect them, and for Anthony Hopkins it was a miracle that changed his life. Even though he never thought it would become one of the most revered movies, his expectations didn't stop it from happening. Speaking to Empire, he revealed how he quickly got inside Dr. Hannibal Lecter's character, even at his age. "I read the script," Hopkins told Empire, "and boom, I knew intuitively how to play him. I knew how he looked and how he sounded. There were 2, maybe 3 voices that I heard. I considered him a combination of Katharine Hepburn, Truman Capote, and Hal from 2001. I don't know why the sound came to my head. In terms of his physical appearance, it was Jonathan's idea that he be pale, and he convinced me to stay out of the sun. My idea was to give him dark, slicked-back hair and wear a tight prison uniform which would suggest total control. After my first makeup session, I went to the mirror and thought, ta-da, this is it. No one can predict how things will eventually go in their lives. Nevertheless, it is worth celebrating if they happen for good." John E. Douglas, the retired FBI agent who is a renowned writer about profiling, got involved.
Profile of the victim, and you ask yourself the question, why was this victim the victim of this violent crime?
In a movie such as The Silence of the Lambs, it would be unusual to think that great people wouldn't have been consulted throughout the exercise. But just so you know, before the scenes were shot, John E. Douglas, a one-time FBI agent, consulted with Harris on his book, and the filmmakers sought his expertise as well. He was a major contributor to how things turned out positively for the movie, as they involved him very early. Talking about the creation of James Gumb, the serial killer dubbed Buffalo Bill, whom authorities are hunting throughout The Silence of the Lambs, Douglas explained in a behind-the-scenes featurette, "It'll be a bizarre character to the public, thinking that someone like this can't possibly exist. But we know this person exists in the National Center for the Analysis of Violent Crime. He is a composite of several serial killers." That amalgam of horror included Ted Bundy, who put a cast on his hand and pretended he needed help while terrorizing women in the Pacific Northwest; Gary Heidnik, who had a torture chamber set up in his basement in Philadelphia; and Ed Gein from Plainfield, Wisconsin, who killed at least 2 women but also dug up graves and made trophies out of bones and skin from corpses. He gave his 2 cents to the directors and producers throughout the process, and when they compared and contrasted, they had no choice but to follow his directives, as he was experienced in the game. Harris revealed how he got the idea for Dr. Lecter. "No one would have ever believed that ideas that eventually make a difference come in ways unimaginable," as Thomas Harris, the original writer of the book The Silence of the Lambs, incorporated into the movie. In the introduction to his book's 25th anniversary, he revealed how he got the idea for Dr. Lecter, which was mind-blowing. In his own words, he said the seed for the character can be traced back to when he was 23, going on an assignment for a magazine to write about an American on death row in Mexico for murder. While he was about his assignment, he talked with a prison doctor known as Dr. Salazar, a pseudonym, in his office after watching him treat the condemned man. They got deep into the conversation, and the doctor asked him his observations about other prisoners' behavior and whether he thought the inmate he was writing about was ugly or if he had seen the photos of the man's victims. This conversation stirred something within him, and he also found out later that Salazar was also a prisoner, a murderer who, as a surgeon, was able to fit his victims into small boxes. He was later released after 20 years and moved to his neighborhood to treat people with low incomes. This idea stuck in Harris's head, and when it was time for him to deliver a masterpiece in his book, he gave it a try, and it came out unarguably well. Scott Glenn was forced to go through an unpleasant situation.
You work with FBI agent John Douglas in preparing for this?
Yeah, I did. I worked with him quite closely, and we've become friends since then.
Did you know that every movie has its own ups and downs? And most of the time, the actors don't have a say in how it eventually plays out. The shooting of The Silence of the Lambs had a couple of challenges, but one among many stood out. Scott Glenn, who played Jack Crawford, the head of the FBI's Behavioral Sciences Unit, who recruits Starling to pick Lecter's brain, revealed what he was forced to endure to deliver a phenomenal performance. In his words, he was made to spend 4 days at Quantico with Douglas, who in fact did what he pretends to do in the movie. He specializes in hunting for and prosecuting sexual killers. Foster also visited Quantico and sat in on behavioral science courses. However, while she looked at crime scene photographs, Douglas wanted her to experience some of the stress of the job. But unlike Glenn, she didn't listen to the recording of a pair of serial killers torturing a victim that the FBI had on file. Glenn went through it all, and even though it wasn't a usual experience for him, it was part of the sacrifice actors make to deliver their best. Any movie that you do where you enter into a certain microcosm, certainly the world of the FBI, you learn things that you could go your whole life and never know about, Foster said in the 1991 featurette, The Making of the Silence of the Lambs. Part of the movie deals with entomology and the Smithsonian's research into insects, bugs. I'm fascinated by, and always will be fascinated by, the people that are the objects of cruelty and the people that are left out. Ted Levine had to go through some vigorous training. Most characters come with many demands, and playing them requires a specific set of skills, approach, and certain factors that make the job easier. After Ted Levine auditioned for the role of Gum, he went through some serious research to give the very best of his performance. I read a lot of stuff, he recalled, preparing for the role of a deranged serial killer. In an interview with Hunter Adams, who directed Levine in the 2014 horror movie Dig Two Graves, he gave a rundown of what happened behind the scenes that no one knows about. I went to Quantico. I met the guys there in the behavioral science unit and talked to them, and they showed me some things, and I heard some stuff. Actually, they got cut off because they were showing me things they shouldn't have shown me. I saw some stuff there. It wasn't good. I heard some real tapes of people who did horrible things. Demme and Foster acknowledged that Hopkins had a special way of making them come alive.
2 of her fingernails are broken off, and there's some jars of grit or something underneath it. It looks like she's trying to claw her way.
In a movie such as The Silence of the Lambs, there was a constant need for little breaks and pieces of laughter to relieve the stress of the day. And guess what? Hopkins was always there to keep it cool. Demme and Foster acknowledged that he had a little method on set, turning his piercing eyes on crew members. "What are you doing in my cell?" Hear how they put it afterward. It was great. Every morning when we do a Lecter scene, Tony would come in and go, in a hushed voice, "Good morning, Jonathan," Demme recalled in an on-set interview, smiling. "You know, you're really the one that's mad." Something in the man's face suggests tremendous decency and intelligence. It's what made him so great for the part of the doctor in The Elephant Man. And he still looks like a great, brilliant, humane doctor, except what we know about him now goes against the grain. They needed it at the moment. And each time he came with his husky voice, it just had a way of putting things together. Demme also revealed how he made him feel while filming The Silence of the Lambs. He just showed up with Dr. Lecter. As a matter of fact, I've spoken to him a few times recently, and he's still Dr. Lecter. I'm a little distressed about that, but that's Tony. I like to think that Tony just got the joke about Dr. Lecter in a way nobody save perhaps Tom Harris may have gotten. Foster had to go through training behind the scenes as well.
Do not touch the glass. Do not approach the glass. You pass him nothing but soft paper. If he attempts to pass you anything, do not accept it.
Did you know that playing a role as complex as Clarice demanded some extracurricular activities? Because of this, Foster underwent rigorous training to equip her with all the necessities for the role. It wasn't easy, but she was committed to making things happen at all costs. Foster practiced on the actual Bureau obstacle course, nicknamed the Yellow Brick Road, with a new agent class at Quantico to prepare for the opening sequence of Starling. She had to jog through the woods, pausing a few times to deftly handle a rope course so she could ideally haul herself into a net. This was her regular exercise, and for the time she went through this course, her mind was fixed on the outcome. "I don't know whether I was surprised, but I sure was impressed," commented one FBI official in The Making of the Silence of the Lambs. "Not many actresses can go through this intense training season and still give 100% delivery. We must provide Foster her with flowers because she deserves every bit of it." Adversarial characters aside, Smith and Levine were total buddies on set. Movies bond two people together, and when actors find themselves in that position, they just play their roles without exaggeration. The movie The Silence of the Lambs saw Smith and Levine go from colleagues to friends and from friends to best buddies. In an interview with Vulture, Smith provided a rundown of how Ted made her feel during the movie's filming. "And I've thought about that," she told Vulture. "Is it that thing people talk about where you overcompensate for the weird stuff we were shooting? Jodie nicknamed me Patty Hearst because I always hung out with Ted, which people thought was odd, but all my scenes were with him, and I can't remember the real name of the dog. I learned this recently, Darla. We had to take care of each other to shoot those scenes. We had to trust each other." These scenes are memorable moments in Smith's life. Honestly speaking, they cannot be erased in a jiffy, even if someone tries. The bond they shared over time in the movie grew stronger each day, and no one knew they felt the same way for each other until it was revealed. Smith and Ted's friendship is the best among the cast featured in The Silence of the Lambs, and, sincerely speaking, they made filming worthwhile. Even though Smith revealed that she hadn't seen him for many years, she expressed, "I just love him. I just love Ted." Harris had more Lecter stories residing in his mind.
I got sort of interested in crime, and
Not many writers can consistently churn out back-to-back stories that inspire movies. Nevertheless, Harris made it happen without much stress. He wrote the 1999 Hannibal 2006 origin story of Hannibal Rising, which became a movie produced by De Laurentiis. Hopkins also returned for the Ridley Scott-directed Hannibal, opposite Julianne Moore as Clarice Starling. Demi and Foster were also supposed to be in the movie, but sadly, Demi passed away, and scheduling problems kept Foster away. I really liked Red Dragon. I liked the original too, Manhunter, even though it had that kind of Miami Vice feeling, Foster told Total Film in 2005. "I don't think you can ever take away what silence was. I didn't do Hannibal because I was doing another movie, Flora Plum. So I get to say, in a nice, dignified way, that I wasn't available when that movie was shot. But Clarice meant so much to Jonathan and me. She really did. And I know it sounds kind of strange, but there was no way that either of us could trample on her." Despite not being able to appear in the movie, other A-list actresses were incorporated into it, and it was mind-blowing. The chameleonic Moore was Scott's pick, and the movie came out as a success. However, don't be too quick to forget that the man who penned the story used in The Silence of the Lambs was still the same one who gave a spectacular story that changed the whole course of the movie industry. Thomas Harris is widely recognized in the movie industry as a name that carries weight, brilliance, and prestige. His works speak volumes, not only because of his skill as a writer, but because his books have served as powerful platforms that filmmakers and scriptwriters have leveraged to create some of the most spectacular films ever made. These adaptations didn't just reach the box office, they conquered it, often surpassing expectations and setting new standards for storytelling in cinema. Harris's mastery of suspense, character depth, and psychological intrigue has left an undeniable mark. shaping both literature and film in profound ways. He is not merely an author, but a visionary whose imagination opened doors for entire creative teams to thrive. For this reason, Harris deserves accolades any day, any time, and indeed he has received many throughout his career. A genius in the truest sense, his legacy continues to inspire writers and filmmakers across generations. Which revelations blew your mind, and why did you identify with them that much? Please let us know in the comments. And don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons, as many amazing videos are waiting for you.